Hello everyone, my name is Siva Dasari and I'm going to talk about code documentation in Python. And these are the contents that we're going to discuss. Jupyter Notebook is the platform that I use for the lectures, and the documentation. You will learn what is it and why do we need it and how we can write documentation in Python. So Jupyter Notebook, the screen that you see that I'm using is Jupyter Notebook, which is open source and free to use by Anaconda. And here I provided some links if any one of you wants to install and use it. One of the advantages that I can have both slides and also the code in the same file. So I recommend if you like to have some information about your assignment or anything that you submit report when you code, I mean, it really helpful when you document it later. So let's discuss about the documentation. You might wonder how we could find all the methods in built-in modules. For example, math is a module in Python and it has several methods that we can use, right? So how we can find the information? We can do that by using the documentation that has information about math module. So the definition of it, documentation is anything we write in addition to our code in order to help someone to understand how our code works. So why do we document it? Helping developers to understand and maintain your code. This includes, of course, ourselves as well. For example, if we have written code 2 years ago, and if that doesn't have any documentation, it might be difficult to understand even if we have written by ourselves. And also, code is more often read than written. This is also when we use a code from the internet or somewhere, first thing we see what it is, right? Then because we want to get the information about it. And then helping users to understand the API of your code. For example, in the functions, why are some arguments marked as optionals? And also, if we have the similar function names, what is the difference between them? This kind of all information, we can find it in documentation. So here is a PhD comic. I'm a PhD student and I follow PhD comics. They're quite fun, I think. So here is one example regarding the documentation. So the professor says, don't worry, you don't have to start your code from the scratch. And also he says, you can reuse the software that the previous person on the project wrote several years ago. And then the questions from PhD students, are there any instruction to how to use it? Then the professor say, I doubt it. And then the student ask again, is the code commented? Not likely. Where are the files? Who knows? So in the end, this is going to be painful, isn't it? Just to scratch. So this is how it will be even for us if we don't have a documentation, which is we use from the previous someone that has developed previously. So how can we document the code? So a simple way, we use comments. A comment is the easiest way to clarify and explain what is the intent and the purpose and the design of the code. In Python, we write comment with hash symbol and a space. And there are different types of comments again. This one, for example, here, it's called Python block comments. a block comment is indented at the same level as code block. So here you see the indentation of both comment. This is the comment, the first line. First line is the comment, and then this is the code. So the indentation for both of them is the same level. And then there is another example as well. So as I said before, Jupyter Notebook, we can run the code. So let's run this cell by just clicking here, run. So here is my output for the code. Hello world, this is block comment, consists of 2 lines. So comments, there are other type as well, which is Python inline comments. This inline comment is placed in the same line as statement. You see here, this is the comment and this is the code. So we have placed it in the same line. And then there are some things to consider when we write comments. Because if you write comments that contradicts the code, which is worse than no comment, because the purpose of the comments is to give information to the readers, right? And that's why make sure that the comment is as close as possible to the code to describe it. So docstrings is a string literal that occurs as the first statement in a module, function, class, or a method definition. So this is another type of writing a documentation. So unlike comment, a docstring can be accessed at runtime object.doc. Object is the name of the function, module, or class, etc. It should be here 2 underscores. I don't know why it didn't print, but let's see this. Yeah, some reason. But anyway, this is should write a object dot double underscore doc double underscore. That's how you write. You will see in the next slide, next example. So a doc, then as I said here, the docstring we write with 3 double quotes before and after. So here is again in docstrings there are types. Single line docstring. Here we have a function which is a square that has this docstring, returns the parameters as squared, return the return value. This is single line docstring. And then the multi-line docstring. Here you see we have a multiple lines. It's not only one line. You have a function and it has a description. This all is here is docstring. So in the first line we have the purpose of the function, and also the return, what kind of type it returns here. And then you have the parameters, which are, we have 2 parameters in square sqrt squared function, which is one is number and then the iterations. So here we give a little bit more information about what is the type and what is the purpose. And then you have a block of code that function has. So the same what I have explained here, I have also listed here. So we have a detailed description of what function is used for and the description of all the arguments expected. Here we have to make sure that it matches the same name as the arguments and also the ones that we have in the documentation. And then optional arguments as well we have to clarify, and then the function what type of it returns, and also exceptions if we have anything. But in this code we don't have an exception, but if we have it we need to provide the documentation for that as well. So when to use a comment and a docstring. Comments are they're best to use when we have a small code. And the doc strings, they're best to use for a larger functions. So here is another thing we have in doc strings. As I mentioned before, if you want to print all the documents, we can just call one doc with the object that we want to get the documentation from. So this is the syntax. For example, the function that we have is written before, which is this one. The name is sqrt. So square root. Here I use print and then sqrt, the square root dot documentation, and then when I run it here, it prints. Sorry, I need to run my function as well because yeah. And then now we go back. You see here, it gives the documentations what we have written in our function. So this is the advantage of using doc strings, because we can also get all the documentation at runtime as well by running one command. So for built-in functions, we can also do, because this is the functions that user define, and then this is the system is the built-in function. This is also we can do. So let's run what will come. So here you see all the information about the system modules and what kind of methods that it has, objects and everything here. All the documentation about functions. So that's about doc strings. Now we can go to a little bit simpler way to get the documentation, or which is PyDoc. Is a standard tool by Python. This is used for display doc strings, the same thing that we just has before. But it also provides the structural information in the program. Let's see an example for understanding. So this is my function that I have written before, square root. So let's run with the help function that PyDoc has. And you see here, we have the information about the function and also the parameters, a little bit more structured than the doc, square root dot doc. You see here the differences. For example, it doesn't have a function, the structure for the function. It just gives exactly what we have written. But this one, the help function, it provides a little bit more structured way of all the program structure that has or associated with the program. So that's about the help function. And also, if we want to look at in terminal for documentation, we can also do that. For example, I can open a terminal and show you here. If in Jupyter, we can just do this here to open the terminal. And then here, I want to have documentation for OS module. You see, I just give the module name. Then we get the same information that we got it in notebook there. But if you want to have it also we can have the same documentation in HTML format as well in the web page. So for that, we just need to use the command -b here, -b. And you see here, we get all the modules that I have in my computer. taking long time. I think my computer is very slow. Let's try it again. Open the terminal. So PyDoc. Yes, here we get it. So now you see all the modules that I have in my computer, we can have it in the web page. And if you want to have a documentation, we just click on it and then we get the documentation of it. So yeah, um, that's what I want to um, talk about in this lecture. I hope you understand how to write the documentation in Python. And thank you.